What's up, nerds? Welcome along to continued coverage of GP Pittsburgh. You're in the booth with me, Riley Knight. Joining me, it is the world number one, Reed Duke. Now, Reed, you and I, we've scoured the pairings, we've scoured the decks, and found two of our favorites to share with everyone. I've picked White-Black Benalia, a deck that is overrun with some of my favorite cards, most of them Knights, and you've picked a deck with one of your favorite cards, Slitherblade, I understand.
Yeah, Slitherblade, limited All-Star.
Oh, yeah.
Although, that's using All-Star in a pretty generous way.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I guess, a limited fringe playable that has also
It's a bit more accurate then. Yep.
made the jump into constructed here in Stefan Lyken's deck.
Yeah, we got a real spicy one. I understand that we got a bit of a glimpse of this deck last round as well, Reed. So the viewers will be a little bit au fait with what's going on here. But talk to us about Mono Blue aggro. We got a lot of islands and a lot of cheap creatures and a pretty spicy brewski here.
Yeah, so in the old days, you would have called a deck like this Fish, where it's just kind of cheap, underwhelming creatures that they kill you in a way that it just feels wrong.
Yeah.
Just one power creatures chipping in while they're backed up by bounce spells and permission. But historically in Magic, that's a strategy that's gotten the job done. It's can be really difficult for slower decks to get their feet underneath them against a strategy like this. And of course, in Standard today, the major payoff for a deck like Stefan's is Tempest Djinn, which can be a 3-mana,
20.
4/4,
Yeah.
5/4, 6/4 flying, which is super powerful.
Yeah, with 20 basic islands, Lycan can really get some turn up the heat here. Ingram obviously respecting the power of Ether Swooper. He is casting a Doomfall to just exile that bad boy straight away. Got a Knight of Malice as well, just a 2/2 at this stage. But you touched upon the Knights in an article you wrote, Reed, and it was something that was actually enormously empowering for me because these cards, I sort of had them consigned to the scrap heap of limited playability, but I didn't think they were going to make the leap in Constructed. I was really pleased to get your take on these cards, that both Knight of Malice and Knight of Grace are cards that you're actually quite high on.
I'm going to agree with you. It wasn't obvious to me when I first read them how strong they were going to be because, I used to like White Knight and Black Knight when I was a little kid, but it felt like the game had sort of passed those cards by, like a 2-mana creature that's going to be usually 2 power, even with First Strike, just not that effective in today's world. However, there's a lot of subtle things going on with Knight of Grace and Knight of Malice that make them very powerful. I mean, for starters, you have that card on the left side of Peter Ingram's battlefield, which is History of Benalia, which the third chapter of that card, pumping up all of your Knights, that really adds up and allows this deck to unload damage at a faster pace than a lot of opponents are going to be ready for. But also the fact that you yourself can produce the opposite color permanent like Peter is doing in his White-Black Knights deck means that you can have a 2-mana, 3-power First Strike creature a very, very high portion of the time, which does make it good enough, I think. A 3-power 2-drop that's difficult to kill, difficult to block, Cruise Your Heart of Kieran. Everything comes together to make these cards quite strong.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much white and black removal that lines up so poorly against, if you've got the right flavor of Knight, they're not going to be able to cast it down, they're not going to be able to seal it away, whatever. And right now you can see Ingram's getting it done. Unfortunately, one of those Knight tokens does get bounced, so it's not coming back. But that History of Benalia is going to pop off next turn, and Lycan's, he's in a bit of trouble now because he's going to face down, 9 power worth of attacking Knights, not to mention hexproof thanks to Shalai, the Voice of Plenty.
Yeah, this is an interesting addition to the White-Black deck. Shalai, you tend to think of this as a white-green card because, of course, the activated ability requires 2 green mana. Not going to see that much out of Ingram's deck. He does have 2 Ether hubs, so potentially it's come up once in the entire time that he's been playing this deck that he's able to activate the ability, but the main reason here is, like you said, a hexproof on some of the attackers, being able to frustrate the seal-aways and other targeted removal, in addition to that really specific interaction that we touched on yesterday of stopping Settle the Wreckage dead in its tracks by giving you hexproof.
So we see an unsummon on the Shalai. Of course, it itself doesn't have hexproof, and now a Tempest Djinn as well. And Reed, you already talked about the importance of this card. 3-mana 4/4 fly, a pretty good rate. And it has kind of stopped Ingram dead in his tracks here, even though the History of Benalia has reached its third chapter here. Ingram does need a way to continue. I mean, this is an interesting... both of these decks kind of want to be aggressive, right?
Yeah, Tempest Djinn, 3-mana 4/4 flyer, and only going to get bigger from there. Thankfully for Peter Ingram fans, he's able to take care of it with cast down. Just about the perfect answer.
And another Knight here. Oh, I'm just absolutely loving this. This is a wild ride, and I'm loving every minute of it. We're just seeing Knight Tribal in full swing here, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Ingram, a man of true taste and refinement here. Stefan Leichen, though, what a day he's had as well. 7-2 at his first his first GP day 2 here. This guy's a full-time dad. Found some time to get across to GP Pittsburgh as well, and he's been rewarded handsomely for his efforts so far. Really put up the numbers with a deck that I don't think anyone was expecting, Reed.
Yeah, you love to see this. A player coming with a completely, original, or maybe original is not the word, but fringe take on the format in a standard environment that's been around for a long time. People had sort of considered it solved with the Chain Whirler decks and blue-white control being the major pillars. But here we see a player at 7-2 doing pretty well for himself in the tournament with, a deck full of 60 cards that almost nobody else in the entire room is playing with. It's really cool to see.
Peter Ingram, however, is really turning the screws, and these Knights are getting busy. They've got dragons to slay, they've got people to see, Reed, and they're going to get out and do that as fast as they can, because this has just been unrelenting from Ingram. He is really not... he hasn't missed a beat, and this Shalai once again coming down. Leichen's going to have a read of the card, but he just hasn't been able to keep up. I think Ingram has sort of out-tempoed his opponent here. Yeah,
and I think it's just... unfortunately, a case of Peter's cards being more powerful on average. Now, that Tempest Djinn is better than almost anything either player has cast in the game. But just the Knight of Grace, the Knight of Malice, the Cast Down, these cards are all more efficient for their mana than Unsummon and Ether Swooper and Slitherblade. So in the absence of Tempest Djinn, it's going to be advantage Peter Ingram just on the basis of his cards being stronger. However, Stefan's able to free up his Djinn from Ixalan's Binding, make a good profitable block here, and we'll see if he's able to fight back into the game.
Looks like poor old Ether Swooper is going to swoop in for a chump block here, but that Tempest Djinn's going to take down the Knight of Malice. That's a nice one here for Leichen.
Yeah, and
stem the bleeding a little.
You can see that Stefan wisely choosing to take out the Knight of Malice instead of the Knight of Grace, because that's the only black permanent for Peter Ingram, and now Knight of Grace is pumped down back to its original 2/2 body.
So Leichen, with the largest creature on the field in the form of Tempest Djinn here, can hold off everything from Shalai Voice of Plenty downwards, but at 1 life, Reed, he's going to need to pull together some pretty spectacular sequencing here to keep himself in this one.
But his deck is nice and tricky, a lot of cheap bounce spells, so it puts Ingram to the tough test of, are you going to send in all your creatures against an opponent with 4 islands untapped and just hope the combat step goes well for you, because Stefan could have Commit Memory, Blink of an Eye, Unsummon. Looks like there's no flash creatures. Oh, no, there are. Merfolk Tricksters as additional flash creatures to ruin the combat step for the black-white player.
A lot of depth to blue in Standard. We haven't seen a lot of it, but there's a lot of weird interactive cards that don't often, get the spotlight, Reed.
Yeah. And another thing to keep in mind is you and I are sitting here, Riley, with the deck list in front of us. We got the bird's eye view, but if you're Peter Ingram, you haven't practiced this matchup. You don't know what cards your opponent is packing. It's completely untested waters.
You're casting your mind through the last 6 draft formats or something. Going, what?
Yeah,
man. What were the instant speed tricks that were in blue and in Ether Revolt? What was happening back then? Jeez. Yeah, going to keep people on their toes, and it's good to see it the deck like this making it to day 2. And featured here on our stream. And certainly it's great to have your company as well as we get further and further towards our top 8. Of course, there'll be a cut at the end of round number 15. Only the top 8 players are going to make it through to that final, and one of them will walk home with a new shiny piece of hardware. So Leichen now finally making a decision. He's playing Curious Obsession. Now this is the sort of the 1-2 punch that can really hammer home some insanely aggressive early explosive starts here. Slitherblade guaranteed to connect through blockers at least, and start drawing cards. And I mean, Leichen obviously digging here, Reed.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a dangerous move for him. He is at 1 life here, so that means he needs the Tempest Djinn plus 2 other answers to Ingram's attackers. And I think what he was thinking so hard about a moment ago is, okay, if I leave the Slitherblade back, I can maybe survive one more turn, but at what cost? I'm going to have to chump block with my creature. Things are only going to get worse for me. So maybe his decision here is to make the aggressive play with Curious Obsession and hope he draws something to stabilize the board in a little bit of a more comfortable way rather than just taking the route of losing a little bit slower with the chump block.
I want to get your take on a philosophy that I've heard sort of pitched around by Magic players, of various types. The idea that when you're ahead, you're incentivized to play more conservatively, and when you're behind, you want to start taking bigger risks to try to get yourself back in the game. What's your take on that?
Definitely, that's the case. You in Magic, you play carefully, and you prepare for all eventualities when you have the luxury to do that. But if you're behind in a game, you need something to change in order for you to become ahead and leverage that into a win. So you have to take chances. You have to look for opportunities. You have to give your opponent a chance to make an error or a misstep or get unlucky. And I think that's what Stefan chose to do with the Curious Obsession. He needs the game state to change in some way if he's going to start on his track to victory.
So we saw Ingram pick up that Shalai to the first unsummon, and then recast it, and then in response, Lycan was able to unsummon, effectively terminate that Knight token there. Unsummon has a huge upside against token creatures, of course. And Curious Obsession is going to hit the bin this time because Lycan made no attacks.
Yeah, wow, look at that. So that's certainly bad news for the mono blue player is having to bin the Curious Obsession. A lot of times with an aggressive deck, the turn that you have to pass without attacking is a signal that the game is going badly for you. You really want to be on offense, but you're shifting your stance, your position to playing defense, and sometimes it can be tough to shift back.
You never wanted to play a Spell Pierce into 3 open mana read, but that's the position Lycan finds himself in. Khan, the Scion of Urza, makes it to the battlefield, Spell Pierce or no, and it looks like he's creating a little golem.
Yeah, Ingram, of course, just happy to make a creature even at 1/1 here because his opponent's life total is 1, so the more lethal attackers you can present, the more defensively your opponent's going to have to play and the better it's going to be for you.
Yeah. Yeah, big stuff from Ingram here. Just Khan ticks down, makes a lethal attacker. Not a bad card. Not a bad card.
No, certainly one of the hallmarks from Dominaria, Karn Sign of Urza, making splashes in every format that it's legal.
Look at this, however. Tempest Djinn getting across. Khan's going to be taken out of the equation. The Sign of Urza has kind of had a bit of a quieter couple of weeks, though, Reed. After exploding onto the scene, Khan hasn't been the huge card that I think that we first anticipated it would be.
No, I think its power level is a lot flatter, if that's the word I'm looking for. It's not as strong in Standard as Teferi. There we see Ingram taking down game number 1, as we sort of predicted for the last couple of turn cycles.
Yeah, he just needed to finally find the piece of technology he needed. Turns out that was Angel of Sanctions. Looked like Lycan, though, was there. Yeah, pretty dead in the water. But I liked it. He went down swinging, gave himself all the chance he could to win that game. But unfortunately for him, going to have to hit the sideboard and rally in games number 2, potentially game number 3 as well. Peter Ingram, Stephen Lycan here. White-Black Knights, White-Black Nalia facing off against Mono-Blue Aggro. I've got Ingram's deck list in front of me. It is a work of art, I will tell you that. A lot of Knights in this list. But I don't know. I don't think his sideboard is necessarily tooled, Reed, to beat the Mono-Blue Aggro Slitherblade player. He's got a couple of interesting options. We do have Fatal Push as something he can bring in to bolster the matchup a little bit. I mean, Ethersphere Harvester is obviously very good against aggro decks, and 2 copies of Settle the Wreckage will treat him pretty nicely. But what are you looking at here? I mean, is he looking at something like a Duress to snag some of those combat tricks or the auras or something?
Well, you gotta figure again that Ingram is, flying by the seat of his pants here. He didn't have a plan for this matchup. He didn't expect to face it, so he's got to use his best judgment and sideboard on the fly. But when I face a matchup like this, I'm gonna play towards, what I would describe as the Jund game plan, the mid-range game plan, where my cards are stronger. Slitherblade, a lone Slitherblade is not a threat. Almost any creature that I can present is going to be more powerful in a one-on-one battle than a Slitherblade. So that means every card that I have that can trade for one of my opponent's cards, that can kill a creature, that can take a spell out of my opponent's hand, I'm gonna look to, because if I can pare down resources and get the board state as close to a one-on-one fair fight between my Lyra Dawnbringer and my opponent's Slitherblade, that's a situation I want to play for. I don't want to let the mono blue get traction. I don't want to let things slide out of control. I don't want to get tempoed out. I just want to kill his stuff and have the last creature standing.
This is actually a really good way to look at things, and I know pretty characteristic of the way you like to play the game, Reed, but relying on card quality rather than powerful individual synergies. You're looking to break up those synergies. Slitherblade, we've had a bit of a laugh about it, but Slitherblade plus Curious Obsession on turn 2 is actually a pretty difficult thing to answer if you don't have, if it gets out of control. As you say, if they get traction. So you're looking for the maximum number of ways to punish that kind of play as early as possible. That means maximizing cheap removal, fatal push. That means that if they're going to go wide, you're going to punish them with Settle the Wreckage. And I guess that's the way. When you don't have a specific plan against a matchup like Mono Blue Aggro, you just want to get back to basic fundamental Magic, trade off 1-for-1, and rely on individual power level. Exactly.
Yes, Stefan's deck can do really amazing things if it's able to assemble the right combination of cards. Like you talked about, a turn 2 Curious Obsession on an evasive creature. If that starts connecting, then he can back it up with his bounce spells, with his permission, playing more creatures every turn, Merfolk Trickstering my stuff, and I just don't want to let that happen. I don't want to let the game slip out of control in that way. So, keeping things simple, trading 1-for-1, and making sure that the mono blue player can't play to that winning board state is the name of the game.
Lycan's got a sideboard that doesn't look particularly well set up to tussle with a kind of aggro/mid-range, this white-black deck that we're seeing here. I'm not seeing any cards in his sideboard that I'm like, yeah, fantastic, slam dunk, get it in there.
No, and with a synergy-based, tempo-based deck, you have less flexibility in sideboarding. It's not as though Lycan can just sideboard out 15 creatures and bring in 15 reactive cards, because then his strategy doesn't work anymore. So he's going to have to look for simple 1-for-1 swaps here and there just to make his deck a little more tuned for the matchup. He might turn to a very small number of negates to counter Ingram's removal spells and his history of Benalias, but he's not fundamentally changing his strategy here.
We see this with linear glass cannon type decks, Reed, that they're not able to over sideboard, right? They can't dilute their main deck game plan too heavily. Both players now examining their opening grips. Let's see what this second game is going to bring between Peter Ingram and Stefan Lycan. Looks like Ingram is going down to 6, unhappy with his opener. Looked a bit slow. We had lands and spells, but Khan is one of your opening plays of the matches. The game is not where you want to be.
That's right. So to get back to our discussion from a moment ago, Ingram does have 3 Karns in his main deck. That's one of the cards that he's, I think, leveraging in his white-black mid-range deck. It's really strong with Heart of Kirin. It's strong, backed up by removal spells. Actually, no Heart of Kirins in Ingram's deck. That's unusual. Usually, white-black is more of a vehicles type strategy. But anyway, Karn, I think, is exactly the type of card that you don't want in this matchup. It's clunky. It can allow you to get tempoed since it doesn't have a big impact the turn it comes down. Karn has been a strong role player in Standard, but nowhere near as strong as its partner in crime in Dominaria, Teferi. Teferi is definitely the more impactful card in this particular format, but Karn with the tame 4 colorless mana cost has made an impact in Modern, Legacy, and even Vintage.
Yeah, we can expect to see the Sign of Urza still getting it done for a long time. Just as you say, due to that colorless casting cost, making it a very unrestricted option for many decks across formats. Here is Knight of Grace after Ingram handily answers the Aether Sweeper once again with a fatal push. Aethersphere harvested the play for Lycan. That was a card we highlighted that might come in pretty good at holding off a lot of those Knights. Crew costs so low as well, just 1 to get the 3/5 online. And Tempest Gin going to hit the exile zone thanks to a Doomfall here. Lycan's hand looking pretty mediocre, Reed.
No, but if he can pick up a creature here, it's perfect for him since he'll be able to crew the Harvester and defend the creature with Negate. But looks like no such luck. That would have been a really good turn to draw. Even something as simple as a Slitherblade or Ether Swooper would have put him in a nice position, but now he's got to fight from behind since he had to pass without using his mana on that turn.
Rough stuff as we see Shalai, the Voice of Plenty, come down. I like this creature as a top-end threat in any creature decks, not just because it protects the team from point removal, as you mentioned before. It also keeps Settle the Wreckage off the table.
Settle the Wreckage, a huge defining card in this standard format, really puts the screws to any creature-based strategy. So that's why you see people turning to creative answers like Ingram's Shalai, Voice of Plenty. Actually, a really cool one in the sideboard of Stefan Lycan's deck, Admiral's Orders. If you've attacked, you can cast it for 1 blue mana, so just a perfect, hyper-efficient answer to Settle the Wreckage. I'm sure he's been getting blue-white control players with that all weekend.
So Ingram now, no attacks, thanks to the Aethersphere Harvester back on D. Lycan did manage to finally find that creature, Siren Storm Tamer. Another answer to Settle the Wreckage.
Yeah, that's a great one as well. Siren Storm Tamer, a very pushed one-drop creature, just a perfect hallmark example of the type of strategy that Lycan's employing here. A fish-style creature, evasive, disruptive, comes down early and just gives headaches to any opponent playing a slower reactive deck.
Yeah, it reminds us of Curse Catcher in that way.
Definitely.
Although, a slightly different function to this card. Here's History of Benalia. Lycan does have the negate. We saw that previously, so Ingram knew about that one, but obviously happy to run the history into the card. He's got 1 card left in hand. Looks like Lycan might be on mono islands from here on out, Reed. Not a great hand. He's going to have to find something.
And wow, actually, Ingram, if he draws his second Ether Hub, we might see the extremely unlikely outcome that I alluded to at the beginning of the match of activating Shalai out of the white-black deck, and that would be game-winning here. It would allow his creatures to start attacking into Aethersphere Harvester a little more easily. It's unlikely, but
hey,
it could happen.
Got to play to your outs. Yeah, let him attack into that Aethersphere Harvester thanks to the pseudo Gavany Township activation there. I'd love to see this. A double green activation from a black-white deck. Give it to me. See what Ingram can cook up here. He's just growing slowly but surely, growing out that board presence. I mean, even a History of Benalia would be helpful in pushing through those that damage thanks to the mighty, mighty creature type there. But a blink of an eye on Shalai, Voice of Plenty. Was that just cast? Oh, sorry, that's an unsummon. Excuse me. I was gonna say not gonna cast that for full value, likes, mate. What are you doing? But no. Servo made thanks to this Ether Swooper, going to get across for 1. Looks like Lycan continuing to develop his board, but that Aethersphere Harvester has just stopped the assault on its tracks, Reed.
Hey, actually a nice pickup for Lycan here in a stalled board. Memorial of Genius being able to draw 2 cards at his convenience. That's a big difference between drawing an island and drawing a Memorial of Genius.
He's going to be able to do that next turn. Unfortunately, the Simon Gertzen special play of playing the Memorial, then untapping it with your Teferi, not an option for Lycan here, although we did see that in Copenhagen more than once, which was quite insane. Here's a duress now from Ingram. Did ultimately opt to bring them in. We talked about how he may choose to do that, and it looks like it's going to be an unsummon in response on the Knight of Malice, revealing a lone island. Interesting timing on the duress there. What do you think Ingram was hoping to achieve?
Well, this is pretty interesting. Sometimes in a board stall situation like this, you might draw a duress and choose not to cast it right away. If your opponent hasn't cast anything, hasn't made any plays for a few turns, you kind of know that they don't have anything helpful for the current situation. So what Ingram may have done there is held on to the duress for a turn or 2 until he was going to make a play of his own, for example, recasting the Shalai after a bounce spell. And that's when you want to clear the way, make sure there's no disallow waiting for you, and protect your own play with the duress.
Okay, that makes sense. Here's a Tempest Gin. So Lycan, you can see that he put aside the mana to activate the Memorial to Genius, but obviously he decided that casting a 7/4 flyer for 3 is a better play.
Amazing,
here,
yeah, very likely to attack as an 8/4 next turn if Lycan finds another island off of either his draw step or Memorial to Genius. That's just incredible. I mean, a creature that you can cast as early as turn 3, but now is representing a lethal attack over the course of just 2 or 3 turns. Super, super powerful.
I'm really pleased to see this card getting it done. I mean, it's great. I mean, we've seen Goblin Chainwhirler in Standard for a long time. We've seen, I mean, I guess there was a little bit of Dreadshade action with that mono black control list that I know you were kind of looking at playing for a while there. But Benalish Marshall hasn't really been getting it done. It's great to see some of these triple coloured cards. Obviously, Steel Leaf Champion's been huge, and Siren Stormtamer keeping the Djinn around.
Yep, perfect. So Ingram with one of the most efficient answers to Tempest Djinn. Legal in Standard, but Lycan still one-ups him with Siren Stormtamer, deploys another one.
Another one!
Ingram's going to need some help here. But also, Steven chose not to attack with Tempest Djinn there. He's a little bit on the defensive.
Well, it's working so far as Ingram is just unable to find a way forward. Triple Knight of Grace, single Knight of Malice there. Unfortunately, he has laid them out. So they're facing away from each other. That's a little diptych. I'm sure you've seen this before, Reed. If you put Knight of Grace and Knight of Malice together next to each other, the picture, the art lines up. Little two-piece sort of comic panel there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, those ladies going at it hammer and tongs.
I would like to see Stefan attacking here. He's got 9 islands, so with a 10th in hand, that represents lethal over the course of 2 turns. The Harvester's doing a nice job holding off the ground creatures. Plus, I don't think passing back and forth with the white-black deck favors him. I think Stefan should be forcing the action here. I think he has the ability to do it relatively safely, and I think he has the need to do it based on waiting being a dicey proposition.
Especially in the face of this history of Benalia as well, which is going to add a huge amount of power and toughness to the board. Here's a Slitherblade.
That one we know can chip in. That one ain't getting blocked.
Yeah. No, get in there. Get in there, boyo. But, I mean, I know what you're saying here, Reed. This Tempest Djinn is finally going to get busy and start to really put some pressure on Ingram. Count him up.
Also, if Peter takes this, he's down to 10. Now he's got to think, oh, my God, I have 1 flying blocker. A single unsummon is going to kill me. So that puts him in a tough spot. I mean, I think he paused and even considered a chump block right away there.
Well, next turn we have that History of Benalia, which is threatening to push through a huge amount of damage. Here's a Lyra Dawnbringer. All right, taking to the skies Peter Ingram. But against what a... Geez, a 10-4, right? A 10-4. Lyra just stops it in its tracks.
And then you see her little, flavor text is actually relevant here, giving the Shalai +1/+1 in lifelink. That's huge.
Oh, I thought you were talking about you were not alone, you never were. Yeah, Ingram, I think probably both lines of the text there, he's very happy to see that. He's not alone. He never was alone. But the Dawnbringer here means that the Tempest Djinn just can't attack with impunity anymore. In comes the 4/5. Shalai, the Voice of Plenty. But a Merfolk Trickster going to remove...
Holy cow, that's a big play.
...all of its abilities. And what does this mean, Reed?
Well, this means that it removes flying, so Lycan can double block with some ground creatures and get rid of a really, really nice attacker here.
So we've got a 3/5 and a 2/2 blocking it, which is going to be enough to finish it off, because of course it's a 4/5 right now.
Although Lycan he's actually missing an onboard lethal kill here, because what I would have done is I would have targeted the Lyra Dawnbringer with Merfolk Trickster, because that's going to remove the all other angels gain lifelink. I'm actually being corrected here that, you can't target the Lyra Dawnbringer. So my apologies to Steven. He's evaluating the board state a lot quicker and better than I am here. The only legal target for the Merfolk Trickster is Shalai.
Because the Dawnbringer, of course, has hexproof next to Shalai. Yes.
It would have been nice, though, to finish my thought, if he could have tapped the only flying blocker and removed the lifelink from Shalai. Those two in tandem would allow for lethal attack. But instead, he's going to just take the nice trade of killing off Shalai, and if he could pick up another Merfolk Trickster or another bounce spell, then he'll be in good shape. Yeah,
Shalai, Voice of Plenty off the battlefield before we could see that double Ether Hub play as well, Reed. A tragedy for mankind. Another Slitherblade committed to the board.
All right, well, settle in, hunker down, because that History of Benalia is coming to Chapter 3 next turn, and Ingram is going to attack for I'm counting 20, 28, 33 points of attacking, most of it first strike.
Wow. Oh my goodness me! This is the one of the biggest saga triggers I've ever seen from History of Benalia. 6 knights on the battlefield.
Charge of the Light Brigade here.
Get in there, boys and girls. Time to go and slay some dragons. Awesome, merfolk wizards. Awesome Naga rogues. Whatever. We take what we can get. There's a shortage of dragons these days, Reed, for knights to slay. So we have to sort of, go where we're sent. In they come. Yeah, all of these creatures, +2/+1.
They also gain vigilance, so Peter doesn't have to tap those knights.
So one of the most impactful History of Benalias I think we've ever seen on the camera here.
Actually, this is a pretty interesting situation because depending on what was actually said between the players, it is legal to miss the trigger on History of Benalia. So if Peter actually declares this attack and taps his creatures and didn't explicitly announce that his creatures were getting +2/+1, there could be an interesting judge call to come. I'm not going to make any claims or any judgments because I don't know what was said between the players. But these creatures should have vigilance, and the fact that they're tapped to me indicates.
So there's Reed. I do hope you've brought your umbrella, man, because I'm going to rain on your parade just a little bit here, my dude. I didn't want to jump in too soon there, but so the History of Benalia doesn't give them vigilance, and from my knowledge, it's actually not possible to miss a saga trigger.
Okay, so a couple swings, couple misses from me here. It's only the knight tokens that have vigilance.
Yeah.
The history does not give vigilance. My apologies there. It is legal to miss a saga trigger, though. What happens is the tick up to Chapter 3.
You can't miss that.
That's an automatic game action,
but
right. You can miss the triggered ability that triggers upon adding a counter.
Yeah, because I heard the judge announcement about the sagas, and it's not possible to miss putting the extra lore counter on the saga, right?
Sure.
You can't miss that, but I guess you can then miss the trigger that comes from that. All right.
Hypothetically, if I ticked up to Chapter 3, buried my History of Benalia, and I said attack you for 2 with my knight token, that would be an example of a missed trigger, according to tournament rules.
Okay. Wow, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on. A lot of moving parts, and Stephen Lycan's having to deal with 6 of those moving parts that are heading across on the battlefield. I guess 7 as well. Lyra Dawnbringer's getting busy.
All right, so to backtrack, reevaluate the situation, no vigilance. That's not an important part of the equation here, but we do have Peter Ingram attacking for 33 points, if I counted correctly. And Steven going to have to... He has 1 good block available to him with the Ethersphere Harvester.
But it looks like he's just going to pack it in. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And I think what happened there was Stefan might have been counting on the lifelink from the Harvester, but the first strike damage just did him in before his Harvester could even deal damage.
Oh, of course, yeah, because all of those Knights of Grace, Knights of Malice, they all had first strike. Not to mention, of course, Lyra Dawnbringer as well. So Ingram able to ultimately pull it together with the power of History of Benalia. Hey, who said history was boring? Well, a lot of people, because ultimately it pretty much is all the time. But not so this time, Mr. Secretary. We saw a hugely explosive turn there, and White Black Knights, White Black Benalia getting it done at GP Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that was crazy. We got to see all of the subtle extra abilities of Ingram's cards coming up. The Knights of Grace and Malice getting +1/+0, the third trigger on History of Benalia, the Lyra Dawnbringer granting +1/+1 in lifelink to Shalai, the Shalai granting hexproof to other creatures. So everything, every little line of text there. And my apologies for incorrectly, announcing some of them on camera. But yeah, Peter was on the ball. All of his cards doing exactly what he needed them to do, and he's able to win that match.
Yeah, he got it done, and he's still alive for top 8. Of course, we're going to bring you continued coverage of the race towards top 8. But right now, we got to go to a break. We'll see you back here at GP Pittsburgh after this. friends, the Tournament 4 here at GP Pittsburgh. Riley Knight, Reed Duke in the booth to get underway with some time walk magic, my friends, to close out coverage of this round. We are going to check in with some of our, some of the players who are doing pretty well on 27 points, these guys here. We are going to kick things off with Game 2 now between Ralph Patesh here and Jack Kiefer. Looks like Kiefer was able to get up in game number 1. These guys undefeated. Some of our only undefeated players left in the room, Reed.
Yeah, really impressive start for both of these players, 9-0. With only 6 rounds to go in the Swiss portion of the tournament. But Ralph Patesh on blue-black mid-range and Jack Kiefer on white-blue God Pharaoh's Gift. So this is not the best or the second best or maybe even the top 5 or 10 decks in Standard, but this is something that's out there. And Jack Kiefer and Corey Baumeister, who we saw on camera yesterday, played it to also a 7-1 finish on day 1. It's a strong deck that some of the top players in the room have chosen.
Baumeister very, very happy with his performance. He was messaging me last night with some stern rebukes for how I called his match yesterday, Reed. I stand by those comments.
What in particular did you take issue with?
Just the shade the extreme shade I was throwing on him for losing every single one of his spell slinging games.
I see.
Yeah, and I still stand by it. I stand by it, my friends. Come at me, Corey. Fight me, my friend. I'll get you. Don't even worry about it.
So I'm excited to see the matchup between these two decks in particular. Blue-black mid-range, of course, super customizable, great sideboard options. You see Patesh with the turn 1 Duress off of his sideboard. So that's going to give him a little bit of a better chance in games 2 and 3 than maybe he had in game 1. However, the disadvantage that he has relative to some of the other decks in the format is blue and black don't do a great job destroying artifacts. So he's packing Commit Memory and maybe that's it. One Confiscation Coup in the sideboard as the only way to actually remove a God Pharaoh's Gift once it gets into play. So he's going to be instead turning to Duress, Doomfall, Negate, things like this to really stop Jack Kiefer before he can ever assemble his combo, because if he does get it, it's going to be too late for Patesh.
Strategic planning here for Kiefer. Kiefer, one of the younger players on the circuit, but I tell you what, his nascent career has already got heads turning and people talking. Reed, this guy is a real up and comer.
Yeah, Jack and his brothers all travel a lot to Magic tournaments. They all put up good results, and the fact that they get to play together, practice together, work together makes them, I think, all stronger than the sum of their parts.
And they've got a very, very supportive family at their backs as well. Their mum and dad are often behind them here at these tournaments. I've chatted with, I think it's Jennifer Kiefer, their mum, and she is right behind. I was going to say their son's hobby, but it's so much more than a hobby now. It's it's really becoming a huge part of these boys' lives, and we're always pleased to see the Kiefer trio doing well. I tell you what, Jack Kiefer at 9-0 here.
16 years old, celebrated his birthday last week in Grand Prix Las Vegas. Happy birthday, Jack.
I don't think a lot of people do that. I don't think a lot of people turn 16 in Vegas. Oh, what are you doing for your 16th, Jack? Oh, I'm going to Vegas. Oh, wow, okay, really getting a head start on it, huh? Minister of Inquiries here for Kiefer. Going to mill over a couple. Interesting, he's chosen to put his graveyard on the left-hand side here.
So the idea with this white-blue God Pharaoh's Gift deck, we've seen God Pharaoh's Gift. It's one of the more powerful single cards available in Standard. There's multiple different ways to put it into play, but one of the God Pharaoh's Gift strategies is to play with a super high concentration of creatures and Gate to the Afterlife. That's the artifact that you can sacrifice if you have 6 or more creatures in your graveyard to go straight for the God Pharaoh's Gift. But this blue-white deck is very different. This is not an all-creatures deck. It does not use Gate to the Afterlife. Instead, it's racing to get God Pharaoh's Gift in play via cards like this Minister of Inquiries, via strategic planning, chart a course. It's looking to dump the God Pharaoh's Gift into the graveyard and cast Refurbish as early as turn 4.
And we saw Patesh aggressively targeting that Refurbish with his Duress, obviously looking to take it out of contention once and for all. The other thing about this deck, though, Reed, is the fact that it can just hardcast the God Pharaoh's Gift, and it does that like an appreciable percentage of the time.
Oh, definitely. And I have to say, I really love Jack Kiefer's particular deck list. This is really similar to what I came to the World Cup with last year. Now, this goes to show you that this is an old archetype. It hasn't changed that much with the release of Dominaria, but Jack has a couple of fumigates in his main deck. He's got a higher land count, so he's building his deck in a very multi-dimensional way. I mentioned that a lot of the strength of this deck comes from those super fast draws where you dump cards in your graveyard and cast Refurbish early, but Jack can also play the long game. He can use defensive blockers, he can use Fumigate, he can use Search for Escanta as effectively a ramp spell since you get up to 7 cards in your graveyard so early, and then once he hits 7 mana, which is going to happen a turn or two from now, you'll see the fireworks start coming. He can hard cast Godpharaoh's Gift, he can Eternalize Champion of Wits, so this is a deck that can very much play a short or a long game.
Very aggressive Minister here, clipping in for 1, but going to be met now with the Glintsleeve Siphoner. Obviously, the Minister no good on defense against the Siphoner, as it has Menace. Glintsleeve Siphoner, a card that the very bold Ralph Batesh has chosen to include in his main deck, and I tell you what, he's been paid dividends for it. He's playing a bunch of 1-toughness creatures in the main deck, and Fearless in the face of Goblin Chainwhirler, and at 9-0, I'm not arguing with this anymore.
So here we see Jack using the judgment call of sacrificing Ipnu Rivulet, valuing the cards in the graveyard more than the land on the battlefield. And look, it's working out well because he milled Angel of Sanctions, which he can eternalize straight away. Embalm. Correction?
So we got the token now coming out. That's going to essentially be an Oblivion Ring type effect, but stapled to a 3/4 flyer. Not a bad one.
No, and when you look down and have that effect for free, you know, Jack didn't have to cast the Angel of Sanctions. It didn't trade in combat. It didn't die. He just milled himself, and there it was. That's a free effect, a free 6 mana, 3/4 flying that kills your opponent's best permanent.
Free in the sense that it didn't cost a card rather than it didn't cost mana. And that's huge. Yeah, absolutely. Not having to commit a card to that effect. And whereas Ralph Batesh had to. He had to commit his Vraska's Contempt to remove that effectively free 3/4. So Kiefer really up on that exchange.
I catch a glimpse. Jack Kiefer has a couple copies of Refurbish in his hand, but has been unfortunate in not finding a Godpharaoh's Gift in the top 20-25 cards of his library so far.
So Batesh gets in for another 2 points with his Glintsleeve Siphoner up to 1 energy. Not going to be able to draw a card next turn, as we see casual little attack with the Minister getting in once again. And Kiefer's hand, I mean, has he got anything going on here? He's just going to double-check the graveyard. Do I really not have a GPG in here?
He has a Thopter Arrest, which is a little bit unfortunate in that it can't answer the Argyll's Bloodfast, but I think his plan is he's going to hold on to that tight because the Scarab God is such a threatening card out of the blue-black midrange deck, particularly for a deck that's so focused on its own graveyard in white-blue Godpharaoh's Gift.
Looks like that Minister is going to be spending a lot more time with his family after the Fatal Push now cuts his career short. And another Fatal Push off the top for Batesh. I like the fact that we are once again seeing Argyll's Bloodfast begin to run away with the game. Kiefer just isn't putting enough pressure on here. And this greed type effect, reminiscent of Erebos, God of the Dead from years ago, Reed, is now all of a sudden, I think, the most important card in play.
Absolutely, and it's perfect here because Jack Kiefer's deck is not aggressive. It's not pressuring Ralph's life total until, you know, it can fully combo off and get Godpharaoh's Gift into play. Ralph has sideboarded in a lot of cheap disruption. He's brought in Duress. He's kept in Fatal Push for those Ministers. And on top of both of those things, he really wants to navigate the game in a way where he can keep his mana open. So having the ability to pass with all his mana, end of turn, sink it into Argyll's Bloodfast, it's perfect for what he wants to be doing.
Batesh drawing multiple cards a turn. We're going to see a Duress now, and oh my goodness me, look at this. A real stinkerino for Jack Kiefer. And Batesh is now also going, do you really not have any GPGs here, dude? Like, what is going on? Did you sideboard them all out? Poor old Kiefer can't catch a break here.
So what Ralph decides to take is going to depend on his hand. If he's looking to get a creature into play like Godpharaoh's Gift, or like the Scarab God, he'll take the Thopter Arrest. If he had something like 1 copy of Negate, he might take Refurbish so that he doesn't have to worry about fighting through 2 of them.
So a nice full grip here for Batesh, and it's going to stay that way as well, Reed, because the Argyll's Bloodfast means that Batesh isn't running out of any cards anytime soon. Essence Scatter going to deal with the first half of the Angel of Sanctions. Kiefer unable to embalm the creature just yet. That could change, however.
Boy, and this is a fascinating matchup. You see how Batesh has to walk this tightrope. He has Duress and Doomfall in his deck, but he also has Fatal Push and Essence Scatter. Just having to respect the many different dimensions of Jack Kiefer's white-blue Godpharaoh's Gift deck. You can't really be all anti-combo stuff, because then you can lose to an Angel of Sanctions or an Angel of Invention. You can't really be all anti-creature stuff, because then your opponent can refurbish on turn 4.
Does attack on multiple dimensions here. As the Scarab God comes down now for Ralph Batesh, he's looking to close out this game. He knows he's a long way ahead and he wants to get it done here. Kiefer does have something of a roadblock with another Angel of Sanctions activation here, going to take care of that Scarab God, but Batesh has the answer. Well, several of them. He's got Commit to Memory. I think he's got a Never to Return hanging out there, perhaps. He's got a lot of ways to deal with this problem. Batesh firing on all cylinders in game number 2 after losing the first game to Jack Kiefer. And it may look like Christmas is just going to be cancelled for the young man here, because no gifts of any kind for him so far. 4 mana.
Batesh has been able to walk that tightrope very well so far in this game, answering both the creatures and keeping Jack from comboing off.
And just a stocking full of coal here for Jack Kiefer as we move on now to game number 3. Batesh equalising marvellously there. And I really like the way that he leveraged maximum card advantage over a player who just didn't have his deck. The pieces just didn't come together there. Search for Azcanta might change that in game number 3, however.
Oh, it's going to change it quite a lot. Imagine Jack had an Azcanta in play for the entirety of that super long game 2. He would have definitely been able to find what he needed, but the fact that he puts into play on turn 2 here is going to really change the way that Ralph has to play. He's going to have to be more aggressive. He's going to have to close out the game, because playing long against Search for Azcanta does not favor you.
Thopter Arrest takes care of the Glen-Sleeve Siphoner. Obviously, she's been up to no good. Taken in for questioning. We'll see what Batesh's next move is. It's a duress now. As we speed things up a little bit, looks like our next round will be coming your way before very much longer, my friends. Round 11 will be overseen, of course, by Maria Bartholdi, and from Wizards R&D, Andrew Brown. Been great to hear some of his insights as to how these sets have been developed, Reed. Strategic planning now for Kiefer.
Really, really strong hand for Jack Kiefer here. He's got his lands, he's got turn 2 Azcanta, he's got 1 reactive spell. And even after Batesh takes away strategic planning, he finds another one off the top to fill his graveyard. So he is right on track.
Easy game, easy life here for Kiefer. Batesh ships no land. Okay, this is rough stuff for him. And Kiefer could continue his unabashed onslaught of this tournament so far. Search for Azcanta flips. Kiefer continues to find his lands, and things are looking good for the youngster here. Batesh, Argyl's Bloodfast. But Kiefer is just going to start ripping cards off the top of his library, Reed. It's looking good for him.
Yeah, he can actually just play a 7th land and cast Godpharaoh's Gift here, and I think that's going to wrap it up.
Godpharaoh's Gift, Au Natural, a la carte. And the Angel of Invention is going to clip in 4 as well. Hasty, Vigilant, Lifelink creature is, well, okay, Ralph Batesh has had enough. He is disconnecting from Magic Online. See you later, my friend. Going to time you out. No, that may be him asking a question away from the table here. Certainly a good time to do it.
I would predict that what he's asking is about the converted mana cost of the token creature, because he could very well have Fatal Push in his hand.
Common question. We'll see how this is resolved now. And it is going to be a Fatal Push on one of the servos, so unable to tussle with the Angel of Sanctions. And Kiefer with another Angel in his bin, Reed. I mean, Batesh has got to find something very special here.
That question about the converted mana cost of the creature, it's tricky because Godpharaoh's Gift, the Scarab God, Eternalize, and Embalm are all templated slightly differently. Eternalize and Embalm make a token copy of the creature with the exception that it has no mana cost, but Godpharaoh's Gift just makes a plain old copy of the creature, which does include copying the mana cost. So 5 for Angel of Sanctions, out of range of Fatal Push. Kiefer,
however, with the Resolve GPG, looks like he's going to continue to unwrap these presents. Another Angel of Invention here. But Batesh with a chance to respond, but what can he do? Kiefer ultimately gets those servos. Going to come in for 6 here. And Ravenous Chupacabra has bites off a little bit more than he can chew, the old doggo there. And he's going to retire for an early lunch. Let's have a look now with an Angel of Sanctions. Another search for Azcanta. And it's all coming up Kiefer.
Yeah, he's really just laying on here. We mentioned Ralph Batesh, very few ways to answer a resolved Godpharaoh's Gift. So maybe his best bet is to try to fight through and hope no more creatures hit the bin, but there, even something as small as a Minister of Inquiries is going to come back as a 4/4 And Patesh doesn't have that many life points left to work with. I think this one's going to be over really quickly.
Oh no, the big whiff now for Kiefer on his search for Escandor. Or maybe just didn't need it. Didn't want it, didn't need it. Doesn't need any extra help as an Ipnu Rivulet goes searching for a better target. And he finds one as well. Champion of Wits is going to come down, draw 4, discard 2. And Kiefer just cannot put a foot wrong here. Look at this. A powerhouse performance from him. Block with Ravenous Chupacabra. Take 1,000,000. Ralph Patesh on his last legs. Looks like, Reed, this is going to be fine as Kiefer's here because Jack Kiefer looks set to continue this onslaught. 10-0, undefeated by the look of things. Let's see if he can finally put the last bit of sticky tape on this present that he's put together. Kiefer, considering his options, he only really has to turn those creatures sideways. Patesh on 4. Any number of lethal attackers coming across. A second God-Pharaoh's gift just for good measure as well, he says. Send a real message. And this particular Santa Claus has not brought the gifts that you want to see, as Ralph Patesh, once again, having a quick read of what's going on. Turn them all sideways. And that, ladies and gentlemen, should be that. Doesn't look like Ralph Patesh is going to have any way out of this one, Reed. Nope, and an extension of the hand means that Jack Kiefer at 10-0, poised to make this tournament his own, Reed.
Yeah, beautiful start for Mr. Kiefer there. Ralph Patesh taking his first loss of the weekend, but still don't count him out. 9-1 is a very good record as well. So we'll be keeping a close eye on both these players as we move through day 2.
Yeah, that's it. A great point, of course. Blue-Black mid-range has impressed us so far, my friends. We'll see if that trend continues. Right now, however, we got to get to a break. The next round is coming your way very shortly. So we'll see you back here live at GP Pittsburgh after this.
Always know the right play to make? Show off your skills at a local preliminary Pro Tour qualifier. With over 2,000 game stores worldwide running PPTQs, find an event near you at magic.wizards.com/PPTQ.
Doesn't matter if you're from Japan or Switzerland or South Africa. I travel a lot. One of my joys in life is traveling. I go all around the world, and everywhere I go, every corner of the earth, there are Magic players. And no matter what city I go to, I go and visit a game store, I sit down, play some games, meet some people, and we are speaking the same language together and have the same kind of stories. What else is like that?
back to coverage of Grand Prix Pittsburgh. Marie Bartholdi and Andrew Brown hanging out with you here for round number 11. And we're about to show you the lone undefeated player in the entire room here on day 2, and that is Jack Kiefer running White Blue God Pharaoh's Gift. And Andrew, this is a deck you said you would be playing if you were at this tournament. Why?
Yeah, it's just because, I've seen a lot of these Magic Online lists, and a lot of them have just started to cut Abrades little by little from their deck. I think that's generally a side effect of people playing less Heart of Kiran. So, shave a little 1, shave a little 2, maybe put a card in your deck that's better in the mirror, but eventually you get to the spot